the fact that you get to do this. It means someone trusts you over anybody else. If you're in that work environment and you're part of a team and the task is specifically for you, you are being entrusted with the task over everybody else. And as I mentioned, in episode 1 and episode 2, like, I'm a person of faith. So not only is the person that gave you the task, or even if it's you giving you the task, the point is you're the superhero with the task. And that is affirmation enough. You get to do it. You get to do it. You get to be the one to check off that thing. You get to be the one to make someone else's life easier. Or if it's a task you assign for yourself, you get to make your own life easier. What is going on, go-getters and winners? Welcome back to the Getting the Win Show. I am your host, Mellissa Thomas. Thank you so much for taking the time to tune in again. It's always a pleasure to come to you guys and bring important information and strategies as it relates to beating procrastination. If you're a recovering procrastinator and this is your first time watching, welcome. Please be sure to subscribe. If you like this episode after you watched it, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. But for now, hit that subscribe button, click the little bell icon so you get all the notifications for all future episodes and any posts that I do in the community section over on YouTube. You can find me on YouTube at Getting the Win. That's youtube.com/@gettingthewin. You can also follow me on Instagram. That is at Getting the Win Show over on Instagram, at Getting the Win Show. And follow me on Pinterest as well if you draw inspiration or if you collect different pieces of inspiration on Pinterest. You can catch me there at Getting the Win Show over there as well. Getting into today's episode, as I promised you guys in episode 2, I wanted to talk a little bit more about prioritization. So in this episode, we're getting to prioritization and reframing. Because as I mentioned to you guys from the start of this series, we want to focus first on the mindset piece. We want to make sure we have our minds right around that project, that business, that goal that we've been procrastinating on, right? We want to make sure that we have the correct perspective on it. I mentioned in the previous episode about the choices between the bulleted list versus the time blocks, right? Because we know some folks only need the bulleted list. You know what I mean? Not everybody needs the specific time blocks. Some folks are fast, their brains are just wired differently. If you're someone like me who needs those time blocks, I understand the importance of that. So, those are two tools. During that episode, you also heard me talk about the Pomodoro technique. So I'll go into that in a little more detail in this episode. I barely kind of scraped the surface in episode 2 about it. And then in this episode, I'll go into detail, as I promised in episode 2, go into detail about how to properly prioritize your tasks. So we're about to get real specific on this one, all right? If you're a note taker, grab your notepad and your pen, or your pencil and a journal, whatever the case may be, however you take notes. But to get into prioritization, this one tool that was a game changer for me in the beginning is what's called Stephen Covey's time management matrix. Stephen Covey's time management matrix. Now, the time management matrix is found in his book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. If you haven't read that book and you're an avid reader, be sure to look into that. Go to Amazon and get it. Go to the library if the library has it, and check it out, and make sure to read that. If you've been in the personal development world and you've never read the book, but you've perhaps heard the phrases begin with the end in mind, or first listen to understand and then be understood, those are principles from the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So this time management matrix is also from that book. But Stephen Covey in this time management matrix breaks it down beautifully in terms of how to prioritize your tasks. So you have on the y-axis, your vertical, you have importance and not importance. So the upper half is important, lower half is not important. And then your x-axis is like urgent on one side and like important on this side. So, you have or I guess you have like important and like not important and urgent, something like that. Don't worry, you'll see it. You'll visually see it in this video. But the point is, in quadrant 1, that is your fires. Like, you have to face those immediately, your fires, because those are urgent and important, like, period. You've got to deal with those. Urgent and important. Quadrant 2, those are more your quality time kind of tasks. They're important, but they're not urgent. So you need to do them, but they're not the kind of tasks that are breathing down your neck. Like, it's not damage control necessarily. Your quadrant 2 tasks are more so your needle moving tasks. So they're still important. You still want to prioritize those. So quadrant 1, very time sensitive, like urgent and important. Knock those out, right? Quadrant 2, important, but not necessarily urgent. Quadrants 3 and 4, I like to say just cut them out. Any tasks that fall into these, cut them out if you can. Because quadrant 3, not important, but urgent. So that can be something, for example, like a family member that feels the need to blow up your phone right when you're in the middle of something, or right when you're in the middle of working on that project that you've been procrastinating on. So urgent, but like, you don't necessarily need to be talking to that relative right then and there. Perhaps a quick answer like, hey, thanks for giving me a call. I'm in the middle of something. Is it urgent? Like, is it an emergency kind of thing? But then quadrant 4 is neither. Like, it's neither urgent nor important. So if that's the case, you definitely, if any tasks on your list fall into quadrant 4, don't even bother with them. Cut them out. You don't need to do them at all. So you have urgent and important, importance and not urgent, urgent but not important, and neither important nor urgent. Cut it out. Don't even bother with quadrant 4. You don't need it. You don't need it. At least not in that particular day. So if that quadrant will help you in terms of organizing your bulleted list, if you're somebody that's using the bulleted list, don't worry, you don't have to take the time to literally draw a quadrant. You don't have to do that. That may take up more time than you have, right? Especially if you're someone who is very driven, you're very visionary, you move very fast. If that's don't worry about it. You don't have to draw the quadrant. However, keep the numbers in mind though. So I'll repeat it one more time if you're taking notes. Priority level 1, urgent and important. Those are your fires, like super time sensitive, gotta take care of it, gotta get to it. Urgent and important. Priority level 2, important, but not urgent. So those are your still necessary items. They're needle moving items. Those are your quality time kind of tasks that you need to accomplish. Okay, so that's priority level 2, important, but not urgent. Priority level 3, urgent, but not important. And notice there's a difference between levels 2 and 3. Level 2 is important, but not urgent. Level 3 is urgent, but not important. So some tasks that may fall into that may be some social media stuff, like you might be getting dings and notifications, and you feel that dopamine hit and you want to respond. You're super excited that folks are responding to the content you put out. It might be urgent because you hear the ding on your phone, but it's not necessarily super important right in that moment, especially if you're finally getting down to working on your baby. that passion project, that goal, if you're doing work towards that goal that you procrastinated on, and you finally, after listening to the first 3 episodes, finally you've decided to pick it up and get started with it. So that's priority level 3, urgent but not important. Priority level 4 is neither. It's not urgent and not important. So these are more just filler tasks or distractions, things that you probably put on your list, but after careful consideration, you realize you really don't need to do right now. Don't do them. If you have other tasks on your bulleted list that fall within the first 3 categories, particularly the first 2 priority levels, focus on the ones that are within the first 2 priority levels, and then leave the ones that fall into priority level 3, leave those for last. Leave those for last. Because on any given day, you want to make sure you're moving the needle with whatever you're doing, whether that's your 9 to 5, if it's the business that you're working on the side, your side hustle, if you're in transition and you're about to make that side hustle your main business, if it's a weight loss goal, a fitness goal, or as Lisa Nichols would call it, a weight release. Because anything that you lose, you can always find again, right? So if you have a weight release goal, you have a health improvement goal, all of these are important. All of these examples are important. And if you finally made the time to start working on them, then definitely cut out priority level 4. You don't need to worry about them. You don't need to worry about them. So I hope that helps. And as I mentioned before, if you need to go back and take a look at the time management matrix, you certainly can. Just kind of slide the timer backwards and take a look back at, the information that you need to see. And of course, this kind of thing is available online. There are plenty of folks that have repurposed it and posted it, for you to download and have for yourself. But that was one of the tools I wanted to go into greater detail in this episode, because I did promise you that I would do that. So if you're somebody with a bulleted list, just use those 4 priority numbers, those 4 priority levels next to each of the tasks that you have on your bulleted list. And even if you're someone who wrote out your schedule in time blocks, still do that. Still assign those priority levels to your tasks, because then you can one-line some of those tasks out of your time blocked schedule, and you may not need to do them. You know what I mean? That can open up a certain block of time. Now, for me personally, I work in 1-hour blocks. So when I write out my schedule, I write out my tasks in 1-hour blocks. And then here's a bonus tip. What I do sometimes is also leave vacant hour blocks in my schedule to allow for margin in my day. I'm someone that is entirely independent. So I have my own business, I have my own schedule, I do a lot of work from home. And so there are situations where some tasks may take a little bit longer than I would like, a little bit longer, and that's okay. That's why we build in margin. That's why I build in margin into my schedule. Perhaps you don't have that. Perhaps you don't have that liberty, and that's okay. But just wanted to slide that bonus tip in there for folks that do, you may have that little bit of extra time. So I wanted to make sure to share that with you, because if you squeeze too much into your schedule and something goes over on time, then that's a domino effect. Everything else in your schedule gets thrown off. And then that affects you emotionally. Remember, I did say in episode 2, beating procrastination isn't about time management. It's emotion management. It's emotional management. So when you start seeing your schedule get thrown off and you're then missing your deadlines for everything else in the schedule, that gives you a hit, emotionally speaking, because then you're seeing that you're not keeping your commitments, and then you start to kick yourself. You feel like you're either failing yourself or you're failing the people you committed to in that particular time block or for that particular project, whatever the case may be, which isn't the truth. Like, you're not a failure. It's okay. Like, It is simply a matter of changing the way that you structure your schedule. Sometimes it comes down to that. And as I mentioned earlier in this episode, I did want to go back to the Pomodoro technique because I mentioned it in episode 2, but I didn't go into it in detail. So I want to make sure to go into detail for you guys in this episode so you know what it is. So the Pomodoro technique, by the way, Pomodoro, it's Italian. It's an Italian word for tomato. So the Pomodoro technique basically involves you setting a timer for 25 minutes, and then you work for 25 minutes straight. You do that is considered an interval. 25 minutes is one interval. Then you take a 5-minute break and go into your next interval, your next 25-minute interval. 25 minutes of straight focused work. Okay. And then after you do 4 straight intervals, 25 minutes, 5-minute break, 25 minutes, 5-minute break, 25 minutes, 5-minute break, 25 minutes. After 4 intervals, then you can take a longer break of 15 minutes or 30 minutes. It's up to you, between 15 to 30 minutes rather. So that's up to you. That's the Pomodoro technique. I wanted to make sure to go over it with you in detail in case that's a better scheduling tool for you in terms of the tasks that you need to complete, or in terms of just the passion project, the one that you've been procrastinating on that maybe you're not accustomed to working on a frequent basis, and you have to flex that muscle more frequently so your body and your mind together can get used to doing it. So I wanted to share that technique with you as well. So far we've gone over the Stephen Covey time management matrix. That's the 4 priority levels, right? Just rewind the video if you need to see it again. The 4 priority levels. And then the Pomodoro technique, which is the work intervals of 25 minutes of focused work, undisturbed, nonstop work, with 5-minute breaks in between each interval. And then after 4 intervals, you can take a 15 to 30-minute break and then go back into it. Now, what's awesome is that a lot of these strategies, they're long lasting. So it's proof that they are very effective. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, that book was published decades ago. That came out quite a long time ago. The Pomodoro method was established in the 80s. So these are strategies that work. So I'm not sharing with you stuff that's like theory or, just talking to you off the top of my head. These are proven strategies that work. Okay. So, and again, in terms of the other time blocks, maybe the Pomodoro technique, maybe you don't need it. Maybe the 1-hour block strategy can work for you. Maybe the, 15-minute block can work for you in terms of writing out your schedule. And then one thing I do want to mention, this is more of a preference. You can experiment with this. I recommend you experiment with this if you're not someone who does a schedule. A lot of people will talk about waking up very early and writing their schedule out for the day first thing. And then you have another school of thought where folks will advise you to write your schedule out the night before. So just sharing with you what my preference is, just sharing with you what has worked for me is coming up with the schedule the night before. Because what that does is it sets up your subconscious mind. You have all the priorities set up. You have everything in your schedule written out that you want to accomplish, including with that passion project of yours, that baby, that luxury item, right? That's built into your schedule from the night before. Now, roughly 5% of your mind is conscious, or 10%. The other 90 to 95% is entirely subconscious. So your subconscious mind will go to work for you while you're sleeping in terms of what it is that you want to do the next day. So then when you wake up, you're mentally prepared, and actually mentally and emotionally prepared. You feel a greater sense of purpose. At least I can say that is what happened for me. I don't know if you've ever tried it. I recommend you experiment with it. If the writing out your schedule the morning of is better for you, by all means, go with that. But I just wanted to share with you what has worked for me. So you've got the time blocked schedule. You've got the bulleted list with the four priority, the four priority levels. And of course, the time block schedule with the four priority levels too. That way you know what to cross off your schedule. That way you don't have to worry about it. You have the Pomodoro technique, which is the 25-minute intervals. And then, making sure you have that option between creating your schedule the day before or creating it first thing when you wake up. But either way, it sets your expectations for your entire day, which is very important. Because can we be real? Recovering procrastinators, can we be real? How often do you come up with a schedule each day? Be honest about that. If it is something that you do on a regular basis, then that's another conversation, and we'll address that in another episode. But I just wanted to go over those time management, or as I call them, emotional management techniques. And there are tons of apps, by the way, if you're someone who maybe you're not one to write stuff down, maybe you think that takes too much time, I got you. So there is a blog post courtesy of Lifehack, or an article, lifehack.org. They shared the best time management apps as of 2023. So look in the show notes to see that link. That way you can click on it directly and take a look at that list. Maybe you use some of these apps. Maybe they're all new to you. Maybe you've heard of them and you just haven't used them. Either way, I wanted to make sure to provide you with that resource so you can get started, and hashtag get on that, right? We want to make sure you get on that. We want to make sure that you are on top of that luxury item, whatever that is that you're procrastinating on. We want to make sure that you've gotten started already, because this is episode 4. We want to make sure you've gotten started already. And if you haven't, let this be that first step that you take. Let this be that first day that you decide for yourself that you're going to start, or you're going to pick it back up. Okay. And if this is your first episode, definitely pick it up. Get on that project. So, as I promised at the beginning of the episode, I also want to talk about reframing very briefly as we close out. So, reframing is also very important as it relates to whether your 9-to-5 tasks or those fires, those level 1 tasks that are urgent and important, but maybe emotionally speaking, you don't feel like doing them. That happens. I totally get it. I totally get it. So you'll want to start, like, all of a sudden want to do something else that has nothing to do with any of the tasks on your list, right? Or you'll want to do one of the tasks that fall under category 4, which you don't need to be doing right now. If you're someone that works from home, you're probably thinking about washing up those dishes. You're probably all of a sudden miraculously willing to get on that laundry, which you haven't touched in weeks. Can we be real about that? It's all clean. You just haven't folded them up because you didn't feel like folding them up. All of a sudden, you miraculously feel like folding them up. So here's what I offer in terms of reframing, because sometimes the way we view a thing determines how we attack it. It determines how we execute on it. So in episode 3, I believe I talked about, or episode 2, I talked about how you see the passion project, especially the longer you procrastinate. Remember, I talked about you can view it as you physically getting away from it the longer you take to get back to it, or you can see it as you marring or scratching your luxury item. So those are reframes in terms of creating a sense of urgency. But there's another reframe that you can use, and this will come from a place of gratitude, not necessarily from creating a sense of urgency, although that is very important. But in terms of a place of gratitude, you've likely heard this if you're in a personal development space, but I want to share it for anyone that hasn't. So there are times when the tasks are must do. And sometimes you can simply reframe it. Instead of saying, I have to do this, you can say, I get to. Even if it's a 9-to-5 task, and maybe the 9-to-5 is boring to you, like it's the job, it's just the paycheck, it's just the investor for your dreams, right? For one, drop the just. That's one reframe. We can start with that. If you're in the position where you do have a 9 to 5 that pays you well enough that you can invest in your dream, that's good. There are a lot of us, particularly those watching in the United States, that may not have the luxury of having only one 9 to 5. They might have to juggle 2 or 3. You know what I mean? So if you're in that position, even that, like taking full inventory of the resources available to you, the resources that are available in front of you, that is the first step in reframing. Taking full inventory of the resources available to you. Not only hard resources in terms of tech, in terms of money, in terms of, a vehicle, physical resources, but also, people. Remember, I mentioned who, not how. Anybody that is in your life that can help you accomplish, who can help you move the needle as it relates to your baby, your luxury item, your passion project. That the people also count as resources. And then taking inventory of your hard and soft skills, also resources. Because for recovering procrastinators, one of the issues that we sometimes struggle with is missing the forest for the trees. So in terms of reframing, taking full inventory of the resources available to you, that can be a game changer. Slowing down and zooming out. You'll hear me use that phrase very often, because when you're in the work, it's very narrow. You know what I mean? You know that feeling? So take full inventory of the resources available to you and look at whatever it is you're facing, whether that's the 9 to 5, whether, the stuff that is in quadrant 1, the fires. Yes, you have to do them, but the beautiful thing is you get to do them. You get to do them. You guys know that I'm, a follower of E.T. the Hip Hop Preacher. And one of the things he shared, this was recently during his Phenomenal Life 2023 conference, he said, for those who are seeking affirmation, when someone comes to you with a task, that in itself is affirmation. So I wanted to share that nugget with you too, in terms of the reframe. The fact that you get to do this. It means someone trusts you over anybody else. If you're in that work environment and you're part of a team and the task is specifically for you, you are being entrusted with the task over everybody else. And as I mentioned, in episode 1 and episode 2, like, I'm a person of faith. So not only is the person that gave you the task, or even if it's you giving you the task, the point is you're the superhero with the task. And that is affirmation enough. You get to do it. You get to do it. You get to be the one to check off that thing. You get to be the one to make someone else's life easier. Or if it's a task you assign for yourself, you get to make your own life easier. Look at it that way. The task itself may be boring or annoying or something that's not necessarily your skill set, but like you're doing it to move the needle. The point is, you're about to make your own life easier. That's something to look forward to. So that is one reframe. Like, you get to do it. You are the superhero for the task. Okay. So look at that from a place of gratitude. Like, I am glad that it's me. I'm glad I'm the one that got entrusted to this. And here's the thing. If it's a situation where you know for a fact 100% that you are not the person for the task, especially if it's a 9 to 5 situation, that is something you have to communicate with your team. Because again, it goes back to the principle of who, not how. If that's a task that's entrusted to you and it's beyond your scope, it's something that is outside of your skill set, that's something you have to communicate with your superiors or your peers to get help with. Because if you're not the best person for the task isn't going to come out at its most optimal, with the most optimal results. And then that's going to reflect back on you, when in fact that's not your fault, because that's not something you're strong at. So the key there is clear communication. That's very important. That's a whole bonus nugget right there. So I wanted to make sure to address that. Okay. So I wanted to just touch on reframing the importance of it, coming at things from a place of gratitude instead of thinking of it as a drag, especially if it relates to that project that you've been procrastinating on, or that goal that you've been procrastinating on. Don't look at it as a drag. Don't look at it as, kind of difficult, like pulling teeth. Like start it from a place of gratitude. You get to do it. You get to do it. You have entrusted it to yourself, or someone else has entrusted it to you. And ultimately, since you're a luxury item, God has entrusted it to you. And since you're a luxury item, that goal of yours, that project, that baby is a luxury item. And you get to be the superhero that brings it to fruition. All right. So I hope that helps. Again, check the show notes in terms of the lifehack.org article for the apps that are going to help you out with time management. And again, just rewind back the video if you need to see the Stephen Covey time management matrix. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. As always, be sure to like, share, subscribe if you like this video. You can follow and subscribe at Getting the Win on YouTube, and on Instagram at Getting the Win Show, on Threads at Getting the Win Show, on Pinterest at Getting the Win Show. I'm Mellissa Thomas, your host. We're goal getters out here, goal getters and winners. So let's get out there and get that win. Again, this is Winning Wednesday, hashtag Winning Wednesday. So comment below. Let me know what your midweek wins are. Let me know how your week is going so far and what that thing is that you're chipping away at. Let's celebrate together. Comment below the video. Hit me up on IG, hashtag Winning Wednesdays. And of course, I'll hit you up on hashtag Fulfill Fridays as well, so we can celebrate the wins for the week. In the meantime, take care. Have an awesome day and an awesome rest of your week.